Welcome to the Animus podcast, a weekly podcast focusing on everything Assassin's Creed community, news, and discussion. I'm one of your hosts, Aftermath1231, and with me today, as usual, is McCracKenway.
Hello!
And Aries couldn't make it this week. Our guest this week is Fatal-Feit from the Ubisoft forums.
Hey!
Woo! Cool. And today we'll be discussing Fatal-Feit's brief time on the subreddit, his podcast, and the Ubisoft forums as a whole. Then we'll move on to Stede Bonnet, and if we have time, we might discuss something else. So let's get started. So Fatal, you've been in the Assassin's Creed community a while, right?
Yep.
Do you want to tell us a little about how you got into AC, how you got into the community as a whole?
Well, I guess I actually don't remember why I actually contacted the community. It was just sort of browsing through the forums. I think it was shortly after Assassin's Creed 2. No, it was Assassin's Creed 4 being teased. I started to pay more attention to the Assassin's Creed as a whole at the franchise, and then I started browsing the Ubisoft forums and started talking with these other fans, and I just thought it was really cool just to just to be part of the community, just start to discuss the games, what we like about it and stuff. That's really how I kind of just got into the community, and then I started to stay, and yeah.
Yeah, and do you want to talk about briefly how you've been on the Assassin's Creed subreddit you've been on there for a while, but not very active, right?
Yeah, more of a lurker there.
Yeah. And before we go into the main discussion, do you want to tell us a little about a lot of our listeners are from the subreddit, so a lot of them wouldn't know much about the forums. So do you want to tell us a little bit about how the forums dynamic works? Because it's a little bit different from the subreddit.
Right, so first of all, I gotta say it's PG-13 there, so you can't really swear or, you can't really, I guess you don't have the amount of freedom you have in the subreddit, and I think that's the biggest difference. However, the forums does have a lot of, really deep discussions, like, it's very, I don't want to say meta, but people there are very passionate about the franchise, and there is always a discussion going on, and sometimes it seems like we're arguing and stuff, and maybe things feel heated up, but it's just part of the forums, and it's like one of those. I remember on the subreddit you guys had something where Ezio being a
bloodthirsty
maniac.
Zealot?
Oh yeah, bloodthirsty zealot. Yeah, that's like
you guys.
Yeah, that's like an average day on the forums for us. We're always having those kind of discussions there. It's very dark. I guess that's how I can describe it. I mean, not dark in a bad way, but that's just how the forum nature is. We really like to be. I guess we really like to have those big discussions, and yeah.
And in addition to this, so a flip side of you kind of having less control over what the rules are and things, because it's not community run, you also interact a lot more with the Ubisoft developers and the Gabe and Esco as well, don't you? That's what I'm saying.
Well, I don't think it's any more than than the subreddit have, but yes. I guess it's more have to do with our members being more active with the community managers, like on Twitter and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys know this former, Just Playing Quirky. She's obsessed with Assassin's Creed recently, and she's been really keeping in contact with Darby McDevitt, and so it's just sort of attracting him to the forums more, and just interacting with the community managers and stuff.
That's very cool. That's good. I've tried to get into the forums a little bit, but it's a little bit difficult to adapt from the Reddit format because it has a slightly different layout and UI. But I'll have to try some more. Now, one of the main things you've come to talk about, and one of the main reasons you're here, is because nearly the same week as us, you guys started your own Assassin's Creed podcast. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, it was just sort of one of those things where, just talking with the other people in the community outside the forums, we were just like, on Skype, we were just talking about how much we love the franchise and, different topics and stuff. And, we wanted to sort of have a way to kind of go beyond the forums, try to discuss it in person, with voice chat and everything instead, just typing down long paragraphs. Because, I mean, we really wanted this to be sort of a way where we can make each other interact with each other more. It's just sort of that thing, like how an average podcast is. You want to get people together. You want them to start discussing stuff outside the forums, and it just kind of blew off that way. And now we have this podcast going, and yeah.
Yeah. One of the main reasons we started it was because, well, I felt that there was a bit of a, with the AC Initiates podcast, the network, going on a bit of a hiatus for a few months, and with the Assassin's Den being a bit touch and go, it seemed like we didn't really have enough Assassin's Creed podcasts out there. So, so I started this really to fill in the gap, and maybe you guys had similar thoughts.
Right. Yeah. It's really cool that as you said, everyone. You really do want to just get our word out there, because I know everyone always has an opinion with the franchise. Everyone's very vocal about it, and just typing it down on the subreddit or forums is not enough. You kind of want to just get it out there. You want people to start being more engaged with each other and stuff like that. So I think it's really cool that you guys have your own podcast for your subreddit while we have our podcast for the forums, and I hope that
there can be more interaction.
People get more engaged with this, and maybe even the people from your subreddit will try to be on our podcast. That's and cool. People from the forums be on your podcast. It's really cool because I want the community to sort of join up and stuff.
Yeah. Speaking of that, do you just want to tell us some places where people can listen to this podcast and where they can contact you?
Well, so far we have a YouTube channel, my personal YouTube channel, Neighbored. If you want to follow up on our podcast, you can just check out the episodes there. We're moving from SoundCloud to iTunes because SoundCloud doesn't allow us to upload every episode because we have a limited amount of minutes. So I don't have any details on iTunes at the moment. I don't have an account there, but it's gonna happen soon. So I'll keep you guys updated on Twitter, where you can contact me at real_foe.
Cool. And the links to both of those will be in the description.
I have to say, I like the aesthetic on the episodes on YouTube where you've got the usernames attached to assassins on on screenshots from the games. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it was just sort of an artistic thing where I really want to have it, since there's 4 of us. I wanted to have it sort of like placing each one of us on an assassin and just having different pictures where we're just showing that we're sort of uniting together to kind of talk and stuff.
Of course, I really like your aesthetic. It's very different from ours, which I think is a good thing. There's a lot of ways everyone could have gone, and I've noticed with your thumbnails more recently that you've started to do that interesting color aspect with each one that I really liked.
Oh, right. The aesthetics, it's still a work in progress on what we're doing with it. We're still trying to work at it. I just recently changed it from multiple colors to sort of just one very dark bluish color. I don't know what I'm doing with the aesthetics, but it changes over time, and hopefully I settle on one of it.
Yeah. So if people want to listen to that, that's on the YouTube channel Neighbored. You can also contact Fatal-Feit on Twitter at real_foe. That's PHO. You can also contact him on the subreddit. What's your Reddit account again?
Fatal-Feit, the same as my UB forums.
Fatal
Yep.
FEIT. And so people are welcome to contact you about being a guest on there, just as people are welcome to contact us about being a guest on ours.
Right, before we get started on Stede Bonnet, I'd like to issue a quick correction. As was pointed out to me, I misspoke in the last episode. When George Washington was around, start of the 7 Years' War, an Indian chief who murdered an ambassador right in front of him. The ambassador was, of course, French, not British, because it was the British at war with the French. Georgie was a Brit. And you don't kill your own ambassadors to start a war, I guess. Yes, anyway. This week's discussion is on Stede Bonnet, a major character in Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, known as the Gentleman Pirate. He was born in Barbados, became a nobleman, or was born a nobleman, became a pirate. Friends with Edward Kenway right from the introduction.
Yeah, I enjoyed this character quite a bit. I thought that he, similar to Christopher Gist in Rogue, he added quite like a lightheartedness into the story, which sometimes was very necessary. Because overall, and separate from the plundering and the pirate fun in AC4, it's a very dark story.
Yes. Part of which is I could just take your lightheartedness and turn it around right now, which is that he's a very lighthearted guy who goes and dies off screen because AC4 is just tragedy and only tragedy.
Yeah, some people didn't quite realize that because he's featured at the table at the end.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I don't know that
they didn't feature his death. I don't think they ever planned to. But
no,
he
I
was
don't know that.
captured and hung.
Yeah, I don't know that they talked about that.
I believe if you have the DLC, you can actually visit one of the islands where you could find his corpse, I think, and then you could take his outfits, and so that kind of just shows that he's sort of died. It's kind of the same way.
Yeah. That was the Amazon pre-order because I got that one.
What about that?
Yeah, it's kind of like how Jack Rackham sort of he was kind of killed off screen, and you found his corpse.
Yeah.
And yes, I do remember that. That was
those ones were a bit more obvious just because they were all in the prison, and that was kind of nice. But
Nice.
actually, Stede
it was very
Bonnet's,
nice.
I mean, it was to have like a cohesive way to be like, oh yeah, these guys are dead. I actually thought that was a pretty interesting optional objective as well.
Some old friends.
Yeah, it felt, because it wasn't like in your face, like do 3 of these or do this. It was like, explore and find things. We're not going to tell you exactly what this is, but you can figure it out.
Yeah,
it was kind of dark. Just playing through that mission. I believe you're talking about the one where Edward just escaping prison.
Yep.
And you kind of telling you to explore, and you're like, "What's up with this?" And then you found his corpse, and it's just kind of it kind of hits you.
Yeah, it's overall AC4 is a very dark story.
Yeah.
I guess the very, very ending, when he meets Jenny, isn't too dark, and it injects a lighthearted ending to it. Because she's kind of naive, and we see Pirate's daddy?
I mean, that's contained within AC4, but I guess Jenny has a more tragic future than is shown in AC4.
We'll be talking about that in some episode. But
Stede, when we talk about Forsaken.
Back to Stede real quick.
Stede Bonnet,
as is the topic here. We originally see him in the very first moments of Edward.
First sequence, first memory.
The first character we meet aside from Duncan, who we immediately kill.
Yeah. The only character that we have met before Stede was dead before we met Stede.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
I have to give a shout out to Darby McDevitt. What he has done with Stede Bonnet is just so amazing. That first scene where you have him, and the first scene where Edward's interacting with Stede Bonnet, and see all the little subtle dynamics and stuff between the two. The dialogue is just so perfect. I don't think it could have been any better than what they did. From shaking their hands, and then Stede Bonnet is trying to brush off the dirt after that. To sort of just following whatever Edward was doing. Sort of Edward's looking around, peeking around the loot and stuff. It's just so amazing at what he did in that scene.
Yes,
that relationship.
Very talented writer.
That relationship I felt was very well. I really liked the dynamic and how it felt, because, I mean, especially with the dialogue and knowing that Edward is deceiving him most of the time. It kind of has this. I feel like that relationship with Stede early on is one of the things, like when you first start Assassin's Creed 4, and a lot of people when they first started Assassin's Creed 4 and it came out, like they had these first moments with Edward, and they're like, man, this guy is a dick. I don't like him.
Yeah.
But you sneak into the fort and you get your maps back, and Stede's like, did you get the sugar?
Yeah.
And Edward was like, no, sorry.
Yeah, there's a very interesting dynamic there very early on between Ed and Stede, because Ed calls says that he's Duncan, and then he kind of switches back on that and says that was an alias, and then Stede says hi Ed, and then Ed says to the governor that that's an alias, and it goes back and forth with these little lies between Ed and Stede and Ed and everyone around him because he's dealing with all the secret business because he wants the money. It's very interesting the way Stede kind of helps that along and both screws that up in several places.
Yeah, I mean, like Stede really, I think his character really brings out brings out a lot of life into Edward. Just seeing that humanity in Edward and how he sort of goes back and forth with Stede Bonnet, and like, as you said, changing his name, telling him the truth and then going back on it, and then even at around I believe the middle of the game where you last see him, he was with Blackbeard, and you kind of see him go away a bit. Like you see how much Edward has sort of influenced Stede Bonnet, and it really shows the type of character Edward is. Like he really does influence people, and he's a really cool guy. And it's just really sad to see all his friends sort of dying. But it's really cool that Stede Bonnet sort of like shows how much of a good person, how much humanity is in Edward, and that if he wasn't so greedy at the time, maybe things could have been different for them.
Yeah. That all plays into like how Stede has a very optimistic, maybe even idealistic view of the world. He seems with his goals, he seems like a young boy, even because he goes off and he's a gentleman and he's living a life of he's living the high life already, and he goes off to be an adventurer, be a pirate.
Because I mean, he finds his normal life boring. He goes out to have fun. He doesn't really need the money. He's just out there to
and as I said in my comment, the money is just a bonus to keep the fun going for him.
In a way, I think actually that's probably one of the more tragic aspects of the relationship between Edward and Stede, because had Stede not met Edward and had these dealings with him, Stede Bonnet probably would not have turned to piracy and gone on to be killed. So in a narrative where there's a lot of people that die, like you can kind of point to Stede Bonnet and you can kind of say if there's one that's Edward's fault, it's Stede Bonnet's death. And I don't know, now that I've said that, I'm kind of sad that we didn't see his death in game. But if you're going to have a famous pirate death, it's got to be Blackbeard, because there's all sorts of myths surrounding that.
Yeah, and we can kind of see Steve's slow... it's a slow transition to being a full-fledged pirate himself, because he goes from just being a merchant and meeting Ed and doing some slightly piratey things, and then later we see him with Blackbeard, arguably the most piratey pirate,
most piratey pirate,
the most piratey pirate, and then we see him on his own ship, captaining his own ship, being his own pirate, and then he dies, gets killed.
I actually personally I have to disagree with you saying that it's with Stede Bonnet. If he hadn't met Edward, he wouldn't have died or something. I don't think I'm disagreeing with you, but personally, I'm actually happy that Stede Bonnet has met Edward and has inevitably met his doom as a pirate. Because I think that the way he was already living, the way the type of man he already was, like he was just sort of a coward, and he was living such a boring life. So after meeting Edward and sort of becoming a pirate and trying to get himself out there and inevitably dying, it's fine, because I think he died as a pirate, and I think that's fine because it kind of shows that he's sort of he's trying his best to evolve, and even though it doesn't always work out for him, even though it kind of cost him his life, I kind of enjoy that. I kind of enjoy that perspective, because just knowing that he tried to be a pirate, he tried to just try to move on from his boring life. I just enjoy it so much more. I feel so much better about his character knowing that he became a pirate.
I mean, as Black Bart Roberts says, a merry life and a short one. So, I guess there's a point there. You have a very valid point. I mean, it's sad to me that Stede died, and I feel like I don't know. If you're going for the tragic angle on Black Flag, then that's another tragic angle. But I do agree that Stede seemed more alive after he met Edward.
He died, but he had more fun in the few months to years that he was a pirate than he ever did while he was a merchant.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was not having a good time as a merchant when you first meet him. He was getting harassed by British soldiers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I have a question for you guys. So, discovering that historically he died, and the way he died was sort of, he was on his knees begging and stuff, and then they still murdered him. What did you guys think of it? Like, just discovering that, that he died and how he died, before knowing about finding his corpse and stuff in the game.
Yeah, he was one of my favorite characters from the beginning because he injected that lightheartedness into the story, and then finding out that he died in such it's opposite to his character in the way that he died. I guess it makes sense though that he was like begging, because it fits his character, because he isn't like this hard jaded pirate in reality, even though he wants to be. I think it makes sense, but it sucks.
I mean, he's actually like very literally this hard Blackbeard, where Blackbeard is a very rugged man. He's got the black beard, he's got bad teeth, he's got a very prominent nose. And Stede Bonnet is this baby-faced gentleman guy who, you can tell he's eaten a wealthier diet than any of the other pirates, and he is very naive. But I mean, I don't know where I'm going with that.
It's just something you have to accept. It's sort of like those dark stories where you don't want them to die, but it's you just gotta accept it because it's for the best, or kind of like that, for the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it allows us that we don't need to wonder what happened to him if we know exactly what happened, even if it wasn't shown in the game, which I think it should have. I don't think they had plans to do it, because that's nothing that Darby's ever mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I think it makes sense that it wasn't shown, even though I'd like it to be,
Yeah, I really would have preferred some sort of DLC. I actually would have maybe prefer if they took out the Liberation, the 1 hour DLC with Liberation, just kind of make it into a side story where Edward's trying to save Stede Bonnet or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just wanted more of that guy because he was such a good character.
Yeah.
I liked what Darby did with him.
Mm-hmm.
And
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, that would give us a DLC into South Carolina, which would be interesting.
Okay, man. So, I'm going to steal your podcast here and I'm going to throw a discussion at you guys. There's just old thread that was just recently bumped. It's from UP forums by a username similarly. It's called Rogue = worth it. So basically, he's asking if you guys think Rogue is worth it. He in the OP he goes to ask, how is Rogue? How does it compare to Unity? He loves Black Flag. It's one of his favorite in the series. And while he had very few problems with Unity, he's anticipating Rogue, and he's asking if you guys recommend it.
I really, really enjoyed Rogue. If you're a fan of the overall series, I think it's a necessity for everyone. But if you're a fan of the overall series, especially Kenway Saga, then it's a must-buy. I don't think the naval is focused on any more than Black Flag, and so I don't think that would be an issue if you dislike that. I think it would be... And if you love Black Flag, then it's going to be just even more of the good stuff.
I think Rogue is kind of balanced so that you really don't have to do nearly as much naval as Black Flag. There's some naval-specific missions, but in terms of content, because a lot of Black Flag is going out and plundering ships to get money, whereas Rogue, you build up your, like an Ezio-style economy where you repair stuff and just reap the benefits, and that you don't really even need to go out to sea because you have so much money. Made some late game achievements pretty hard because I had not attacked any convoys or anything.
Yeah, It's a very interesting dynamic, and it's like a balancing act. Some of the aspects are taken from AC3, and some of them are taken from AC4. It seems like a child, offspring of the two, really.
Yeah, I felt actually interesting thing for me with the whole Kenway trilogy. I didn't really find myself using an abundance of tools until Rogue, partially because in AC4 I felt like the only real useful tools were your pistols, and you didn't get the rope darts until nearly the very end of the game.
What about the blow dart?
True, blow dart, berserk dart. Those were very useful.
As well as like the air rifle in Rogue.
Yeah, I felt Rogue. Rogue because it had a variety. Like you could keep relatively quiet with the blow darts, but even gas grenades could be pretty quiet, and were pretty useful for crowd control. And I found myself using rope darts a lot more, just because I felt like they gelled with the rest of the tools better. I think Rogue, mechanically and gameplay-wise, is probably the epitome of the Kenway saga. Though I personally prefer AC3's combat.
I do too.
Yeah, I felt like AC3's combat. I mean, you could compare it to Rock, Paper, Scissors, but I still felt it had more strategy to it than Rogue and Black Flag, where it's attack until someone dies, then counter kill. Whereas in Assassin's Creed 3, you had to know what the various enemies were susceptible to and how to approach situations. And as such, I felt it a lot more satisfying when I was doing well, I guess.
Yeah. One thing that's very interesting, the excuse makes sense, like, the ability to kill civilians, while Shay is always, and we touched on this in the Shay episode, he's very against killing civilians, and yet the excuse is that he doesn't have a creed, which says he can't.
Yeah.
I like that they really added in the hunters that were taken from the system in AC4's Naval, and they were put into the game, into the cities, to New York, and it worked really, really well, and I really like that. I haven't played around with it a ton, but I've seen a lot of footage of it, and I think how they're really tough, and you can't just go around slaughtering civilians, even if you wanted to, unless you're going to face some opponents for it.
You know, I think I went the whole game without ever killing enough civilians for bounty hunters to chase me. Just because, like, I guess, because of the way you play the rest of the Assassin's Creed games, where you don't kill civilians, it was not in my playing vocabulary to kill civilians, because it didn't really make sense to me. It just didn't feel tactically viable, I guess. Like, I guess some of the earlier gameplay demos, they kind of made a point of saying you can kill civilians and this is going to be a tactical thing. And then I felt it didn't really make sense to the character. We mentioned that. And it didn't really provide an advantage over any of Shay's other tools, I guess.
Yeah.
What do you guys... Yeah, I'm just gonna say something because it seems like you guys really did enjoy Rogue and its gameplay, and you highly recommend it. What do you guys think of the price tag? It's charging you $60. Do you guys think it was? You guys say it's worth getting, but do you guys think that $60 is a good price tag for it?
That's something we've discussed quite a bit on the subreddit and certain posts about. A lot of people some people at least have the state of mind that you're paying for a game based on how much time you get out of it. I don't really believe that. You don't pay for a book based on how long it is. You don't pay for a movie based on how long it is. You don't buy a TV show based on how long it is.
Regardless
I think, before you go on that, McCracKenway,
yeah,
I think that you're buying it based on the quality of the experience, and I think Rogue, while it's much shorter than Unity, I think the quality of the story, the quality of the gameplay definitely allows it to be easily $60.
I was actually interjecting to agree with you about the time to dollar ratio. Mostly because, I think you get different things out of games, like, depending on it. So, I guess depending on what you wanted out of Rogue, it could be worth different things. Like, if you wanted a long, very involved story, then Rogue probably isn't worth $60 because it's got a pretty short story. But if you're going to get into all the collectibles or whatever, like I did, then it's probably worth $60 just because of the amount of content there is. But I don't know.
There's a lot of side content there, and some people feel that it's just like busy work because it's just a lot of collectibles.
I have stated that opinion before.
There's a lot of collectibles versus Unity's a lot of side missions.
Mm-hmm. Unity also has a lot of collectibles with it.
It has a lot of collectibles, but it has a lot of side missions to balance it out. Well, Rogue basically only has a lot of collectibles.
I felt that in terms of Psycon, I actually thought they were probably about equal in how I valued them because Rogue had better collectibles, but it had way more collectibles, or at least it felt like more of a chore to get them because you had to go further, and they were less dense. And then the settlements and forts I thought were a really nice non-mission gameplay opportunity. Just go to a place and take out the fort, and then that helps progression in the game. But I felt like Unity's chests were really tedious, but Unity's side missions were awesome. So you're
saying that kind of Unity balanced it out a bit, while Rogue kind of sort of balances out a bit because the settlements add a lot to it. I think the settlements added a lot to bring the world alive. The perfect AC game, because I actually saw Assassin's Creed series in a top 5 collectathons video a while ago. I think the perfect side content balance would be Unity's Paris stories, maybe a few less because there's probably some fat there they could trim out, but still keep with like the forts and stuff from Rogue and the fortresses we've enjoyed since like Borgia Towers. And if you're going to have collectibles, don't do the chests, which don't give you enough money to be impactful. Do it more like Rogue, where there's story or gameplay content.
I actually really like how, I think you guys, if you've seen this on my podcast before, I really like how Assassin's Creed 3 kind of did the chest. They weren't wasn't like they weren't all scattered over the areas and then just hit B and then open it. There was actually one chest and one area, just one chest, and you have to lockpick it, and then it gives you a lot of money and stuff. So it's worth worth trying to kill the guards, trying to sneak in and open it. Whereas Rogue and Unity, you just have these chests sort of everywhere, and you're just sort of killing people, just opening it, then go to the next one. Where Unity, it's more bulky. It kind of makes sense because you want to get to that chest because it has so much reward to it.
And, in Assassin's Creed 3, I mean, that was tied into the whole economy system, which I know not a lot of people necessarily got heavily into, but if you do take the time to get invested in the economy system and build money, then going out and collecting the chests is awesome and also mostly a necessity to complete like a lot of the side missions in that.
Yeah.
Because recipes.
I have to agree with you about the chest in Unity, where it's even in Rogue. I just think that chess has sort of became something that's really redundant in the franchise because making money is easier through other methods. I really don't see the point in chess because in Unity, that one mission where the last mission you can get like 75k gold just like in like 5 minutes repeating it. And in Rogue, you have the economy system, so you really don't need the chess. I have to agree with you on that, and I think that they should really trim the on the side collectibles and just focus on the type of content like Paris stories. Yeah.
Well, I think that wraps up the episode for this week. Thanks for joining us, Fatal.
Yeah, I mean, it was really fun to be on here, and thank you for the opportunity. And hello, everyone, subreddit. Sorry, I'm not active enough.
That's fine. I think we can all handle that because you're quite busy over on the forums. All of Fatal's links, including to his podcast and Ubisoft forums and everything like that, can be found in the description. Special thanks to subreddit users Redoon and LWS Rocks for allowing us to use their music, which can be found in the description along with timestamps for everything we discussed. As usual, you can reach us on the Assassin's Creed subreddit, which is assassinscreed.reddit.com or reddit.com/r/Assassin's Creed, as well as on Twitter and through our email, animuspodcast@gmail.com. Next week, we're joined by Pixie from the subreddit. If you'd like to be a guest or would like to ask us a question to answer on the show, then you can contact us in any of the ways listed earlier or any ways listed in the description. Once again, thanks for joining us. Have a good night.